Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Mohan Puttaswamy. As some of you guys know, I did Shrikant's mom's knee replacement. So after that, Shrikant always wanted me to talk about how do he pick a particular hospital and a particular surgeon if he doesn't know the contact. So this really got me thinking about, there is a real need in the community about how do people go about picking hospitals and surgeons. And as a result of that, I put together some slides so that I could share some information. So I see about 55 to 60 of you have logged in. So I think we'll get going after this post-lunch session. So basically, what gives me the rights to talk about this? So it's been about more than 25 years in medicine. So in this journey, I've been through various institutions, and I'll share you my background where you can understand how I can give this talk. So I spent about 11 years in the government setup. This is Victoria Hospital and this is Madras Medical College, where I did my undergraduation and post-graduation training in orthopedics. Then I moved to Delhi. I spent about a year in this trust hospital, which is called as Holy Family Hospital, and then I moved to a private medical college called PS Medical College in Kuppam. Spent about 4 years there teaching undergraduates and postgraduate students. After that, I moved to the US, spent a couple of years there, one at Buffalo General where I did my joint replacement fellowship, then moved to Mass General, which is considered the #1 hospital in US, highly competitive, top of the line private healthcare systems anywhere in the world. Then after finishing my training, I moved back to India. For the last 7 years, I'm working as a consultant on joint replacement and reconstructive orthopedics in Fortis Hospital, Bannerghatta Road, and other Fortis hospitals in Bangalore. Along with it, I have my own outpatient setup, a small outpatient clinic kind of setup. So in this 25 years, I've had flavors in various types of healthcare systems. And with this background, I think I'm confident to highlight about the pluses and minuses of a particular healthcare system. Now, when we take into consideration what factors go in when you pick a healthcare facility, I think the first three are the critical, and last one is a negative kind of a point. The expertise of the treating doctor, that's the #1 point based on which one has to pick a particular hospital. Then what is the expenditure, the cost of care involved? It might be out of pocket, your insurance. So expenditure plays an important role when you pick a hospital. Expectation. So what I mean by this is, there is a small hernia or an appendix kind of a surgery which is 1 or 2 days stay, can be done in various setups vis-a-vis a major cardiac surgery or a oncological procedure which requires a massive healthcare infrastructure. So the underlying healthcare problem and the expectation from that problem will decide what kind of a setup one picks. Expedience, off late, at least in urban centers, I see in Bangalore where people are cribbing to travel 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers, they're really unhappy to travel. But my general opinion is, if you have to travel even 200 kilometers to meet the expertise, I think it is worthwhile because it makes a huge difference in the ultimate outcome. Now, what are the options available? Today, when we look at inpatient care, there are quite some options available. So these are broadly applicable to Indian scenario, and also in most developing world scenario, this would kind of agree to the concept of what's happening in any developing world. A nursing home, which is highly locality based, mom and pop kind of a thing, single doctor owned caring centers, small locality based multi-speciality hospitals, 15, 20 or even 30, 40 bedded hospitals, again they small locality based. Then we have specialty centers, obstetrics, ophthalmology centers, large medical colleges, trust hospitals. Then we have this large tertiary care multi-speciality hospitals. In the last 20 years, there have been huge number of multi-speciality hospitals which have come. Government hospitals, they do play a role. For the last post-independence or even pre-independence, some hospitals have traditionally taken care of lots of patients. Lastly, one of the things which gets neglected by urban patients is government centers of excellence. Many times it's underappreciated, under-recognized. There are quite some good centers. If we take example in Bangalore, Nimans and Jaydeva Hospital have done tremendous job, and missing out on their expertise can be a mistake. So Neglecting them is not an idea. You can generally talk to people and find out what are those hospitals which are available. Now, this represents the core dilemma. What's the problem? What's the appropriate center? So, when we define it in this way, it goes to, basically we can divide it into 4 basic problems. Routine medical issues which contribute about 80% of the doctor visits, emergency medical problems, routine surgeries and emergency surgeries. So broadly, any problem we encounter in our daily life falls into one of these 4 categories, and a vast majority of them are routine medical issues. So let's see what are those issues. So when we look at routine medical problems, it could be a common cold, headache, a lot of well baby visits, gynecological visit. About 80% of my practice is going to be very simple: back pain, knee pain, neck pains, muscular issues. A majority of outpatient visits in the community are routine medical issues. Now, emergency medical problems are like heart attack, pneumonias. So whichever requires intensive care management constitute the emergency medical issues, and routine surgeries and emergency or complex surgeries, like I've mentioned here, a simple fracture or a hysterectomy or routine surgery. When we talk of this last category, this is where the differentiation comes in. The entire healthcare infrastructure, investments are catered towards these complex situations, because this is where the cost of care really goes up. A major cardiac, neurosurgical setup, a joint replacement or a transplant surgery, they're hugely expensive and requires complicated setup. Now, neighborhood clinics. So like I was talking, so there is like many of you have got statistics and economics background. So there's this principle called as a Pareto principle. 80% of the either profits or attention, and 80% of even the revenue comes from 20% of the problem. So what I mean by that is, only 20% of the problems are significant, whereas 80% of problems are routine medical issues. So this can be addressed in a neighborhood clinic. So majority of these are either doctor owned, they run in the evenings. They have few basic facilities. They might have an X-ray, a lab, an ultrasound scan. The biggest advantage of what happens with a neighborhood clinic is convenience. Like, you don't have to miss out on your work. Majority of them are open in the evening. You don't have to pay for the parking. So, and generally the consultation charges are much lesser compared to a hospital setup. So the convenience is the key when you pick up neighborhood clinics, and many doctors, even though they work in a multi-speciality hospital, they have their own neighborhood clinics, and that is something which you should consider. Now, this slide sums up about how do you pick a hospital. There are 8 metrics which people generally tend to look at. The most important is the doctor and the specialty, core specialty of a particular hospital. Traditionally, some hospitals have strong departments in cardiac surgery or orthopedics or any of those things. So you can assess the specialty, what is the infrastructure they have, what is the expenditure, and what is the general feedback about a hospital. When you ask around, you will have opinions about these things. And the doctor is at the core of it. Then when we look at other factors, you have to look at your insurance, location and accreditation. I'll talk a bit later about accreditation. But other than the core of doctor and these 3 considerations, rest of it is just logistics. Now, location. Certain specialties are location specific, something like obs gynae or pediatrics, because you need to have multiple visits. Irritable child, you can't travel for lengthy distance. So picking up hospitals or healthcare facilities nearby your place of residence is a good idea. Then there's a new concept which has evolved over the last 2 to 3 decades. Ophthalmology, obs gynae, cancer and trauma. They've become subspecialties. There are some strengths and there are weaknesses, which I'll tell you a bit later. Like I said, domain expertise. Now when we look at certain subspecialties, ophthalmology, it's a vast specialty, so people get diluted if they come to a major hospital, vis-a-vis the many ophthalmology procedures which are done as daycare procedures. So a single ophthalmology setup, it's safe enough to undertake any routine cataract surgeries and any of the eye surgeries, and a lot of specialists, very expensive equipment, everything is there in a single roof. Now something like psychiatry, dermatology, rehab centers, they're all domain, they've moved away and they have their own centers, and it's worthwhile considering separate setup than going into a general hospital to look at these particular problems. If a choice is between a hospital and individual standalone centers, psychiatry privacy might be an issue. Dermatology and cosmetology, if there's some procedure which they want to do, the workflow will be much easy when they have their own centers. So the question is, how do we pick the right center? So this is the core reason why you guys are listening to this talk. So like I said, for any routine medical problems, neighborhood clinic and nursing homes, the big advantage, accessibility and affordability. Now, majority of OPD services, whenever you need a procedure under local anesthesia, some cyst excision or a corn excision, they can be done in a neighborhood nursing home. And you need an antibiotic administration, somebody has a urine infection or a mild pneumonia for which IV antibiotics has to be administered, they can be done in a neighborhood nursing home. Whereas when we look at the next step of it, we'll have these emergency medical problems, routine surgeries and major surgeries. Now, when we deal with emergency medical problems, the most important thing what we have to keep in our mind is redundancy built into the system. So what I mean by redundancy is, there should be a good tertiary care center which should have a very good staff, well-staffed ICU. So this is what makes the difference between life and death. So without a good ICU backup, a patient might not get the kind of care they need. Again, when we do routine surgeries, 95% of surgeries go without any complication. But some surgeries can have issues, and that is where the ICU backup again kicks in. And lastly, major surgeries are a no-brainer. You definitely have to go to a large-scale, full-fledged setups. Now, medical colleges. Many a times again, a lot of middle-class, upper socioeconomic strata people don't consider medical colleges as part of the decision-making process itself. But let me talk of a few advantages and disadvantages. So there are basically three kinds of medical colleges which are there in our country. Government medical college, trust-based non-profit medical colleges which have a non-profit hospital attached, and lastly we have for-profit medical colleges which essentially have a business model for their education setup, whereas they subsidize their hospitals. So what I mean by that is, eventually in all of them the cost is much lesser than a private establishment which only does clinical work. The big advantage of medical colleges is, if there's any complicated and rare diagnosis, then medical colleges really help in taking care of those problems. Something like the classic example is, if a child has a genetic or a syndromic problem, I would generally advise them to go to a medical college because there is various departments which are available. And even more important is this round the clock attention. Whenever you look at any of the other setups, say in a small hospital, there will be one duty doctor or at best two doctors in the evening. Whereas when we look at a medical college, there are various chains of command. So you will have an intern, a postgraduate, a junior postgraduate, a senior postgraduate, and an assistant or associate professor on call. So even if one person misses out on a problem, the other person can pick it. So this chain of command makes a big difference in a medical college, and they're helpful for any teamwork kind of procedures. If a patient requires a surgery which requires multiple departments to interact, again medical colleges are helpful because the cost multiplication doesn't happen. It only adds up, and still you can get cost effective care. The disadvantages of a medical college is absence of individual care. Morning you will be seen by a postgraduate, afternoon you will probably be operated by anybody in the team, another postgraduate sees, so you don't feel that individual care which comes in. And standards might vary. So a government medical college will have generally hyper competitive kids come in, vis-a-vis a private medical college which might not have the same level of competitive kids who go in. So the type of standard you expect might not be there compared to the type of medical colleges which exist. Trust hospitals. So again, this is another neglected group, but I would honestly advise you guys to explore, because they've been a bridge. When we look at the evolution of healthcare in India, the corporate or large-scale multi-speciality hospitals have been there for the last 20-25 years. Before that, a large number of these trust hospitals were catering. So what I mean by these trust hospitals are, basically they're not-for-profit hospitals. They're run by dedicated and motivated organizations. Many of these are religious, But the important thing is they're not for profit. It's generally run by either missionaries, church missionaries, or the Hindu endowment program, Islamic institutions. But all of them have certain principles where their goal is to give good care. They have either good or decent infrastructure, and they have good doctors. So majority of them are for salary, and many of them have been practicing for a lengthy period of time, and their value systems are definitely going to be towards good patient care. And surprisingly, some of the mature trust hospitals can handle even complicated problems. Now, the disadvantages of these trust hospitals are many are run by religious organizations. Some might have their early church prayers or Hindu hymns being sung. So some people might not like it, but that's part of the give and take. And they're not very cost effective. They're moderately expensive, but definitely one can consider it. If you don't have insurance but still want a good quality of care, then trust hospitals definitely are able to fill in that bracket. Now comes what we call as the modern tertiary care multi-speciality hospital. So there's a huge price tag with modern healthcare. Now the reason I share this is then they're not just at the pinnacle of healthcare delivery mechanism, even the costs are extremely high. Surprisingly, for what problem should we go for a multi-speciality hospital? For any routine surgery, say a cardiac, orthopedic, laparoscopic or gynecological procedure, any protocol driven surgery, something like, see, routinely we do a ton of joint replacements. So any joint replacement, there is a care pathway which is already created. So there's no need to alert any systems. Everything automatically kicks in and patient care is quite good, and any complication is picked up early, treated easily. Now, the other advantage of tertiary care multi-speciality hospital is ICU care. So ICU care, definitely, yes, multi-speciality hospitals will have those backups, the equipments necessary, something like you people would have heard recently about ECMO. These are costly equipments which are necessary in taking care of sick patients, and many of these multi-speciality hospitals have them. Now, what are the disadvantages? The biggest elephant in the room for any multi-speciality hospital or tertiary care is cost. So most of you understand arithmetic and geometric progression. If there is a complication, the cost of care really goes up by geometric progression, because the kind of care which we have to deliver requires a lot of investigations and interventions that increases the cost of care. In some multi-speciality hospitals, not all specialty might be available. So again, because they are procedure intensive, if a person needs a lengthy stay, the cost of care really goes up. Somebody wants rehab care in a multi-speciality hospital, that becomes really prohibitive. And again, multidisciplinary surgeries, sometimes you need 3 or 4 surgeons to come together and operate. And in those scenarios also, in a multi-speciality hospital, the cost of care goes up. Now, what are the unique problems? There are not every problem has the same solution. I'll address 4-5 problems. Now, when there is a rare diagnosis, something like genetic, again going back to genetic or perinatal surgeries in a young child, a medical college and trust hospitals are really cost effective. They'll have expertise and you will get the same quality of care. Again, if there's a multiple team involvement necessary, like a patient needs neurosurgery, orthopedic intervention or a plastic surgery, a trust hospital is far more cost effective than a multi-speciality hospital. Having said that, I do a lot of team-based surgeries when we do trauma and other things, but when we compare the cost, a trust hospital generally is cost effective, similarly with a medical college. Now these dialysis is a recurrent cost. If you look at not-for-profit dialysis centers, some of them operate at 700 rupees. Vis-a-vis, there are boutique dialysis centers where cost of single dialysis goes up to about 5,000 rupees. So there's a huge spectrum. Based on the financial situation, one can pick up what dialysis center you want to do based on your interaction with your nephrologist. Now, I spoke about accreditation. Now, the important thing about accreditation is this something called a STEP. So accreditation is generally a voluntary procedure which hospitals apply to. So basically, accreditation means that they check for these parameters. What is the safety? Is there timely effective intervention? What is the efficiency of the system? How equitable is the care? And how patient-centric is the care? So the various accrediting bodies, so some of these are, we have both national and international accreditation bodies. So of this, I think JCI and NABH is something which we have to focus on. JCI is an international organization called as Joint Commission International, where they come, inspect, look at literally hundreds of parameters in a particular hospital and look if they meet international standards. So if a hospital in India is JCI accredited, it means it's on par with any international care delivery hospital across the world. Similarly, NABH is something which is National Accreditation Board of Hospital and Healthcare. NABH also sets the baseline requirement where safe patient care can be delivered. So when you see an accreditation in a hospital of JCI or NABH, you can be rest assured that certain processes are in place which deliver care. So like I said, these are the metrics, and another important thing, the basic standards are met. So many a times you don't know if they have an equipment or what kind of doctors are going to be taking care. Surprisingly, even today, a lot of ICUs can be run by Ayurveda and homeopathy doctors. If there's a proper accreditation process, that generally does not happen. You have a baseline nursing and physiotherapy setup in place. And even more important, the protocols are in place to pick up complication and process improvement. So all of these accreditation bodies require certain committees to be set up, and having these committees will help pick and avoid problems in the future. Now, picking the right multi-speciality hospital. Now, whenever somebody asks me which hospital to pick, I always suggest them research the domain expertise. So some hospitals have some strong departments. Please research those them, and then you can find out who's a good doctor, or vice versa, where you are comfortable with a doctor and what specialty hospital he visits. They generally have good to great infrastructure. Now, the big question I often get asked is, if a knee replacement costs X amount with me in Fortis Hospital, it costs about 70% of that X amount in a nursing home. Why is it that Fortis is so expensive? My general answer, or the general reality, is this. Whenever these hospitals invest, they invest in all good quality equipment. An operating table, an imported operating table might cost 40 lakhs, whereas a nursing home can have an operating table at 7-8 lakhs. Similarly, when they look at a C-arm, when they look at surgical robos, all of these increase the cost of care exponentially. And I always tell my patients, if I operated in a nursing home, I might probably take more money compared to what I make in Fortis. So it's about our ability to use this infrastructure to do complex work. So what questions do you need to ask? So some of the key points I would suggest is, who runs the ICU? Is it the anesthetist or intensivist? If any hospital has exclusive intensivists, it means to say that it's a mature hospital. Anesthetists are doing their role, whereas intensivists are doing their role. So it's a simple question where you can ask either one of the nurses or the service line managers who's running the ICU. Now, who gives the 24/7 support? So when you are in the hospital, who takes care of you? The consultants will operate, but who are the ones who are on the floor who are doing routine care? Is it specialists or generalists? So what I mean by that is, if there is a specialist round the clock, majority of hospitals have residents who are already post-surgical training, so their ability to pick up a problem and address them is much more easier compared to just general post-MBBS kind of doctors. This is something I always insist on, because if there is a complication, one of the main complications of surgery is bleeding. If a hospital has a full-fledged blood bank, then you can be rest assured that even if you need 3-4 units in case of an emergency, that is there to take care of you. And the last one might not be very important, but that still is very useful. Is a consultant in-house, or are they visiting consultants? So what I mean by this is, many a times consultants might visit 3-4 hospitals, whereas if a person is dedicated to one hospital, their ability to care and logistics is much easier. So in-house consultants make a small difference. Now, what point should never be considered according to me is pricing and distance, because this is something which is superfluous. At best you have to travel 3, 4, 5 days to go to the hospital, that should not take away from the main reason why you are there for quality healthcare. Now, boutique problems. Unique problems, one of the things which I see is the new boutique hospitals. Like we discussed, ophthalmology standalone centers, the risks are much lower, mostly daycare surgery, quick turnaround time, they're very efficient. So, ophthalmology hospitals, most likely that's the way forward which it is going to evolve. Now, there's a trend which I have observed over the last decade and a half, which I have my own biases, or based on the evidence I see plus and minus in obstetric and gynec care. What I mean by that is, many of these standalone obstetric hospitals don't have an adult ICU. If the mother has an issue, then they'll not be able to take care. So, if there's a need for ICU, they'll not have an intensivist, which I mean there's no support departments available. And if they need blood, they generally don't have blood in-house. So, birthing is not just an experience, it's a medical issue which requires proper attention. And many of the standalone hospitals have glamorous infrastructure. Some of them have surprisingly good ancillary support systems, but some of them might not have the necessary infrastructure, and you have to talk to your obstetrician and gynecologist about the pros and cons of going to a standalone center. Again, the last decade and a half, we are seeing the standalone cancer and trauma centers coming. Whatever I told for obstetrics applies here too. There's no multidisciplinary approach. What it means is, basically there are no heroes in any surgical specialty or any patient care. What we need is teams. So we need good supportive system and holistic services. So having a standalone center might not be able to deliver the kind of care which a patient deserves. So always a team approach is critical, and many a times blood bank services are absolute necessity when we care for our patients. So this is to summarize whatever I spoke till now. So broadly what I want to tell you guys is, medical colleges and trust hospitals are most cost effective. Governments is either no cost to minimal cost, whereas a large tertiary care, modern, corporate or a multi-speciality hospital are expensive to very expensive. So in a trust and medical college, please remember, there too cost adds up, whereas in a multi-speciality hospital sometimes the cost of care really goes up quickly. Now, talking of certain other new trends which we are observing over the last 5-10 years, Google information. For everything people Google online. Many a times I get patients who say I have come for second opinion. When I say, where did you take your first consultation? They say, I read on Google, which personally is very funny, but it can lead to a lot of psychological stress, and generally Google information is better to understand a problem rather than to diagnose a problem. This is a big fad which has started. A lot of labs do come home and do self-testing and self-medication. This is something which is actively to be discouraged. It's not for me to improve my business, it's just that we have to stop having complications, and one of the things where complication can happen is self-medicating. There's a new trend of online consultation which is picked up. During times of COVID, I have seen a lot of patients online. My personal bias is always towards proper examination, proper care delivery to a patient. What I believe is, convenience is replacing conscientious medicine. Whenever you can, please go to a doctor, let them examine you, because medicine is always a profession and not a business. So we are not looking at huge profits. For the entire length of my time, for my professional time, I might not make a ton of money, but what I'll make is a ton of difference in somebody's life. So this is something which is extremely important. So visiting doctor physically so that they can do a proper examination is a key. Now, second opinions. Now this has again become a huge rage in the community, where somebody is advised a surgery, they want a second opinion. They go to another doctor, they go to a third, fourth, fifth opinions. So what happens is, this shows generally a lack of trust in a particular system, and if you really need a second opinion, my advice to you is always go to somebody who is in a different sort of a setup. What I mean by this is, if you've seen a doctor in a multi-speciality hospital, in a corporate hospital, go to a trust hospital and see what their opinion is and what is their understanding foundation based on what they're making their recommendation. So that gives you a different perspective rather than going to a same sort of setup where many people think in very particular formats. So that might give you a different perspective. So looking at the situations, if obviously you don't have any money and insurance, government hospitals or charity hospitals are the only option. If there's limited money and no insurance, my general recommendation is a trust hospital. If you have insurance, you will look at what network your insurance provides and you can research your doctor and hospital and pick that particular healthcare infrastructure. If there's no financial concern, so you will always go for a great infrastructure, and even more important, what confidence does the doctor inspires you. And lastly, you can look at bells and whistles, what kind of parking they have, what kind of canteen they have. All of those don't or should not be taken into a factor when you make a choice of a particular hospital. Now, I often get asked these questions. This problem of mixopathy. For asthma, I am taking homeopathy. For skin problem, I am taking Ayurveda. Now, doctor, you are prescribing this medication, is it okay? Now, the problem is, my honest answer is I don't know. But when we look at these alternative systems of medicine, I see this picture. Majority of these alternative systems of medicine always look at what is non-curative in the modern medicine or the so-called allopathy. So what I mean by that is, you never see any ad by an alternative stream of medicine on, say, pneumonia management or urinary tract infection management, because they know that modern system of medicine has cure for these particular problem. So whenever you want to take these alternative streams of medicine, so my simple advice is it scientific? So when we look at what is science at its foundational level, there should be an underlying rationale to it. So there has to be a diagnosis based on symptoms, examination, investigation. The doctor comes to a particular rationale. So if this is there, you can go to them. Many a times, some people start prescribing just by symptoms, which I find a bit problematic. Repeatability. This is something which is extremely important. Anything to be scientific has to have, in multiple people, it has to give consistent results. Obviously, no man is a robo where you get the same result, but consistency is the key. If the medicine gives the same result in many patients, it indicates that medicine or a surgery, it indicates that it is scientific and you can pursue it, and it should stand the test of reason. Now, when I prescribe a medicine, I always tell my patient what is the dose, duration, and what are the potential side effects. One of the big attractions of any alternate scheme of medicine is people think there is no side effects. Now, if something does not have a side effect, is it generally going to work? And second thing, are we basing it on faith or is it based on reason? So if all these three metrics are met, I think people choosing any system of medicine should be okay. Now, as patients' responsibilities, this is something which is progressively happening. There was a time when there was a paternalistic or a patronizing approach by doctors. That era is gone. Now it's a shared decision making process. So what I mean by shared decision making process is trust. Like basis of any relationship is trust. Similarly, a doctor-patient relationship is fundamentally founded on this principle of trust. So, but please verify, verifying the doctor, verifying the credentials, the hospital is important, but trust is paramount when a particular treatment is being recommended. Now, respect expertise. This is something which people tend to lose perspective of. Either a good physician, a good surgeon, a good intensivist, they are not fungible commodities. They are not just available off the shelf. It takes years and years of discipline, hard work and training for people to reach the skill set where they reach. So when people talk about any particular doctor, please remember that they have got there by a lot of sacrifice. So please respect expertise. So just reading a few articles on Google doesn't make people smarter. So taking it forward, refrain from unreasonable expectations and miraculous outcomes. Even the smartest surgeon or a smartest physician cannot cure metastatic cancer, and that's a reality of life. Have realistic outcomes and have realistic expectations. I've had patients come in and ask 100% guarantee of outcome. So I always tell, if anybody guarantees 100% success, they're practicing quackery. So there's no 100% guarantee of cure, but there's always a 100% guarantee of care. So what I honestly suggest is, look at the pros and cons. It's always risk benefit for everything we do in life. So even just we go out, an accident can happen, but the risk benefit is the chances are remote and we always have to live, so we go out. Similarly in medicine, it's about assessing the risk and benefit and taking an informed decision. Now with this whole online transition, people have started writing reviews. So please do share your experience, but do not write reviews out of anger, spite or vengeance. So no doctor is God. So you're angry because something went wrong, or you want vengeance, that is never going to make any progress. So never write a review based on anger, spite and vengeance. Please give an honest, objective feedback. The reason I mention this is, what I earn over a period of time is reputation. The only thing I have which I take from patient, yes, we take some money, but my reputation, my integrity is in my patient's hand. So what I earn over a period of time is reputation, and it's so easy to take away it. So please be objective when you make comments or reviews online. And the fundamental principle, this is something which I stress time and time again, your expenditure has no bearing on the outcome. So how much ever amount you spend generally doesn't mean there's a guaranteed outcome of success. The only thing what you can expect is there's going to be better care when you have a lot of money, but there's nobody who can give you a better cure if you have a ton of money. So like I said, judge by the quality of care and not ability to cure, because please remember, death is a destiny all of us share, and nobody escapes this particular destiny. So hopefully this talk should have given you guys some points where you can make an informed decision regarding your care. Thank you guys.